Hello everyone and welcome to Nights on the Sofa. We are very delighted to say we've got Michael Doughty on tonight, so I'm not going to keep you long so we can get Michael on straight away. Just to say, tickets for Stockport on Saturday, there are tickets still available, so if you go through the Stockport ticket line to get those, they're not from coming from here. I think that's to do with the postal strikes and things like that, so they wouldn't have time to send them out. So. Okay, let's bring Vic on. Hi, Vic.
Hi, Chris, and as promised, I have my Halloween mask on this week in honour of what's happening this evening. So I hope you enjoy it over the next hour or so. And as for SAS Travel, yes, they are taking bookings for Stockport this week. Of course, it's the FA Cup on Saturday. And there are plenty of spaces. So if you'd like to get along and ask them tomorrow, they're on phone bookings only. There's a fairground, I think, at the county ground, isn't there? So that is not helping people parking, etc. Phones tomorrow, but they will be there in person on Thursday or available by the phone. So Stockport bookings only for this coming week. And just a reminder that if you have booked already, they leave the county ground at 9 o'clock, I think, on Saturday morning.
So that means they've put on a second bus then, Vic, does it?
If they get enough bookings, I think that's the case.
They have got enough. That must be why they've got spaces now, because they didn't have.
So they'd like more people on it. Yes, I think it's fair to say.
And after Saturday, I think the whole lot would like to come because it was a brilliant game of football. And we just had a message through. Don't forget, there's a train strike on Saturday as well. So take
more
that in mind.
More reasons to go on SAS Travel, I think it's fair to say.
If you are going. Right, I'm going to bring Michael on now and then leave you to it. Hi, Michael.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
We're all good, thank you. Okay, so any questions for Michael, please leave them in comments. Again, we will get through as many as we can. As always, I will send a list of them to Michael so that he can see them if we don't get through them all. Okay, right, Vic, I'm going to leave you and see you later.
Chris, thank you very much indeed. It's a great pleasure to speak to you, Mr. Doughty. I have to say, we've already had lots of messages saying how much they're looking forward to this. First and foremost, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I've had an intense couple of weeks at work, and we just launched a new product at my sportswear company. So that's been a bit of a intense time. But apart from that, I can't complain. I'm all right. I saw the Robins one at the weekend, so I saw the highlights of that. Some vintage football, to be fair. I was quite impressed. So yeah, that was good to see.
Yeah, we'll get to how you feel about that a little later on, and also your sportswear company, because it's kind of, I don't know, topical at the minute, I think, with what's going on in the news, COP27 and the like. So we'll talk to you a little bit later on. You might notice one of the shirts behind me that you wore for the town, the Imagine Cruising one, and also there's a T-shirt there marking your championship campaign, which we'll also get to, which sadly didn't finish. But we'll talk about all that in a minute. Let's talk about where it all started then. Chelsea and QPR as a youth. How did that all come about?
So I'd always played football as a kid. I think, like most professional footballers' stories, become enamoured in love with the sport. And I played for a Sunday League team, and I think scored sort of 30 or 40 goals in a season. I think, like most kids of that age, you sort of play up front and just try and score as much as you can. And through that, I got a trial at Chelsea at 8, which sounds a little bit a little bit early, but that's how quickly I sort of got into the system. And then from there, I got released from Chelsea. I've never got over it, and ended up at QPR as a 13-year-old, where I trialled for about 2 to 3 years, and was sort of loosely connected with the setup there, and only really got offered a proper contract at the age of 16.
Yeah, who was your team? And you were born in Westminster, I think, weren't you? So who was your team? Oh, by the way, happy birthday for next month, because you'll be.
Thank you. Cheers. Yeah.
How old will you be then?
Yeah, I break 30 next month. So yeah.
I don't remember 30, but anyway, happy birthday for when it comes. So you're at Westminster, where you were born. Who was your club then?
Well, it was Forest. I think it was sort of well documented that my family were involved with the club. So it was a bit of a shotgun wedding, I think, in many respects. My dad was from Nottingham. Well, he's from Newark, which was just outside of Nottingham, but was from the Midlands. He sort of grew up supporting the club, and then we grew up obviously being very connected with the club and going to most games home and away, really up until the age of 14, 15, when my football started to get very serious. But yeah, we used to travel up and down the country following Forest.
Yeah, your dad, of course, Nigel, owned Forest. I think it's fair to say, didn't he?
Yeah, no, he was. Yeah, he was the owner for 10 years. I think maybe even longer than that. And we relinquished ownership of the club in September. Sorry, not September. It was 2012, I believe. So yeah, I think almost 13, 14 years actually. So yeah, amazing club and buzzing to see it back in the Premier League now.
I was going to say, yeah, apart from the result of the weekend, of course, which, you wouldn't have been too pleased with. But what an extraordinary club. What an extraordinary roller coaster. You could sort of draw a conclusion, a sort of comparison with Swindon, really, couldn't you? Because it's had its moments, I think it's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think for Forest, it's always been sort of a bit of a nearly story, especially over the last 20 years. Multiple championship playoff semi-finals, a relegation to League One, a promotion back to the Championship, and a hell of a lot of money in between being spent chasing the promised land. And then you see obviously what the club is capable of. More from a fan base point of view, when you see it in the Premier League. I went to the Liverpool game, actually, one of the first games I've been to in a long while, a couple of weeks ago, where we beat Liverpool, the mighty Liverpool, and it was it was pretty astonishing to see the stature of the club in real life in a Premier League game. And I think, Forest and Swindon in like many ways has quite a lot of comparisons, in the sense that certainly at the level that Swindon are at and with the fan base, you kind of can't help but feel there's a bit of a sort of untapped potential there. I certainly felt it when we had that championship winning season that you referenced earlier. We'd have some home games, sell out at the county ground. The place was rocking, and it felt like a championship club at least.
Yeah, the great tragedy, of course. Well, tragedy is a loose word to use in these circumstances, but the remaining home games in that campaign, which you've missed out on, we'll never know what they would have been like. I mean, if you take Exeter home game as a yardstick, they'd have been pretty special, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I love that game so much. It was one of my favourite memories. There was just like this intense atmosphere, and there was so much riding on the game, and the fact that we won 2-1, it felt at that moment that we were really odds on to sort of go on and certainly get promoted, but potentially win the league.
We'll talk about that a little later. Right, at QPR, you get your breakthrough under Kevin Bond and former Swindon Championship winner Chris Ramsey, of course, who won the 4th Division with Swindon in 85-86. It took a while, but you got there, didn't you?
I did, yeah. It took a hell of a lot of time. It was weird. I sort of spoke about it earlier, but I didn't really develop fully as a footballer until sort of my late teens. I was sort of not even starting as a scholarship footballer in the youth team. And, that, not that is everything, but it is, if you're struggling to get a game in the youth team, it sort of doesn't bode well for your chances to get a game in the first team. But then in my second year as a YTS, as a sort of scholar, I just really kicked on and not only were starting games, but was also, scoring, assisting every week, and then managed to get a call up to the Wales youth set up, started playing reserve team football at QPR, and then, as you said, made some first team appearances in the Premier League under Chris. But truth be told, I never really fully cemented my place there as like a verified first team player. I was always a sort of a squad player and the best young player, in inverted commas, that that the club had on the books at the time, and a lot of my spell at QPR was sort of punctuated by several loan moves and a lot of men's football.
Yeah, I was going to get to these loan moves. I mean, there's quite a list. I mean, Crawley, Aldershot, St Johnstone, strangely, Stevenage, and I think you got your first professional goal against Crawley. Is that right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was for Aldershot. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So a lot of loan moves. I think at the time, it's a bit different now. Like clubs aren't so sort of willy-nilly about where young players go on loan. But for me, we didn't have the same process of like vetting clubs and making sure that it was the right place for you to develop. It was kind of like mates and favours in the game, and where you would, where somebody had a contact, and I think in many ways it was good for me because you get a lot of different experiences, but in many ways I think I suffered because of that, because I think, as the Swindon fans will know, I'm a very certain type of player, and certain style of play and managers, it either works really well with or it just doesn't work at all. And I think, I probably would have been better served, going to a Swindon straight away and rather than trying to sort of muddy around in these sort of different clubs where the ethos didn't necessarily suit me.
Yeah, the Wiltshire Pirlo, of course, you are known as affectionately here, or as somebody pointed out to me, Pirlo is known at Juventus as the Piedmont Doughty, Piedmont being a region of Italy, which is lovely. I mean, how did that? When somebody calls you the Wiltshire Pirlo, how does that feel? I mean, that's a real compliment, isn't it?
I mean, it's wicked, obviously. My affection for Wiltshire in general and more personally Swindon is, I think, well documented. It's by far and away the happiest I've been in my career as a footballer was playing for that football club in all the spells, and in particularly the last one. The place is filled with just special people from a club perspective. All of the people who work at the stadium, the people who work behind the scenes, obviously the players I had a great rapport with, and then the fans as well. And I feel like sometimes in life you find these places where it just works, and everything for me and my whole feeling around the place just felt so good. The Wiltshire Pirlo is, I think there's more comparisons perhaps to be made with other players, but maybe it was my lack of pace and mobility that.
Well, you've frozen a little bit. Are you back again? Are you back? Are you there, Michael? Lovely. Marvellous. Well, lots of comments coming in. So I'm going to get through them and then we'll continue our chat. But Dave the Chair, who is a pretty tremendous guy who follows the team here, there and everywhere. Evening, Rick, Chris and the team. Michael, of course, still on a high from Saturday. Firstly, we all miss you at Swindon Town, Michael, greatly. Question, if I may, best goal out of the 23 you scored in a Town shirt in all three spells. Love to you and your family. We'll get to that in a while. Just store that one away, okay? What's in the bottle, Michael? Is it water?
Yeah, well, not body. Yeah, no.
Yeah, fair enough. And just to get this one out of the way, digestive is your favourite biscuit. So before anybody asks, that's it, okay? Right. Sean says, was gutted when you left us, Michael. Hope all is well. Legend. Brad says a midfield of Williams, Darcy, Gladwin, Reed and Doughty would be something else. That would be something else. Maybe I can press you to coming back. Who knows later? I doubt it somehow. So lots are coming in and we'll get to them as you go. Evening, Michael. Are you still knocking about on your scooter? Did the club ever have words with you for riding it? Now, you famously used to get the train to training, didn't you? And then ride this sort of battery-powered scooter to the county ground. Is that right?
Yeah. It was actually very efficient. So I loved the GWR. Big up the GWR. Amazing train service. In the world of unreliable trains, the GWR is by far and away the best service.
Other train services are available.
I'm not a shareholder in GWR, by the way. I live about 15 minutes from Paddington Station, walk, and I worked out that if I scooted there and scooted to the county ground on the other side, I would save the equivalent of about 2 days in my year, but
Wow.
by the accumulation of minutes that I would. For me, it became a no-brainer when I looked at it. But I think the manager was a little bit nonplussed by the fact that I was sort of breaking road regulation in the middle of the town. I think he quite liked it in many ways.
Fair enough. Well, I'll go back to your sustainable qualities, which we'll get to a little later. A reusable bottle with water in it. I think that's a statement straight away. So Swindon then come calling, and you go on loan to the town. This is while you're at Peterborough. So did you have an instant affinity with the county ground? Was it something you thought, hang on, this might be the club when you first walked in the door? How did you feel?
So the first time I came to Swindon was a fellow player at QPR, a guy called Bobby Zamora, who I'm sure people will know well. And Bobby was best friends from the Norwich youth team, I think it was, with Luke Williams, the Swindon assistant manager at the time. Or Luke was actually just had become the manager, I believe. So the opportunity really came about through Bobby saying to Luke, this boy's really, got some talent. I think you should take him. And Luke, for me, was just the best football person I could have worked with at the time, and still one of, my absolute favourites in my career. And he just really just gave me so much confidence after having quite a few loan moves and, kind of half making it at QPR, but not fully cementing my place. It just gave me so much sort of affection and love as a player, and told me that I really could do anything if I sort of, I guess, trained in the right way and listened to him. And I just responded super well to that, because previously in my career I'd worked for quite robust managers, let's say, who sort of were more stick than carrot, and for me, like, I found that a bit of a challenge, whereas Luke was just brilliant in sort of motivating and understanding how to get the best out of me. And then off the back of that, I think my performances were so strong that the fans kind of really took to me, because I think you earn the respect of the fans. You don't walk in the door and become, a fan's favourite in inverted commas just because you've got nice long hair, as much as I'd like to believe it. But yeah, that came over time. But it was really Luke that gave me the platform through his personality and the way that he dealt with me.
Well, I was going to mention your luxuriant hair, but I thought I'd skip over that. But you brought the subject up, so that's fair enough. People do know you for your luxuriant hair, and there it is, a perfect example of it. Yeah, let's get more of these in. Ian says, absolutely love watching Michael play. He made it look so easy. Steve says, Michael still looked as fit as a butcher's dog in the Legends game at Supermarine in the summer. Is he still kicking a ball? Mitchell says, do you get the same fire in the belly from high-low as you did walking out at the county ground? That, of course, is your company, which we'll get to a little later. So you'll get from what these messages are saying, you were kind of liked. You're at Peterborough and you sign a 3-year contract, don't you? But the lure, if I might put it like that, of Swindon is sort of you get the opportunity to join permanently for Swindon, and so you have this contract at Peterborough and you have a chance to join Swindon. How did that all come about, the permanent move
with Swindon?
Yeah.
So I had a difficult first year at Peterborough, and I played okay, but the chairman was an opinionated character, let's say, or is an opinionated character. And I think they brought me in under the premise that I would be a goal-scoring midfielder, which is what I did in my first loan spell at Swindon. And I played holding midfield, and they were questioning why I wasn't scoring or assisting. To me, there was a pretty logical conclusion there, and it just my face didn't fit. They didn't like, you know, I guess the salary I was on for the output that they were expecting. And in the end, it was a pretty difficult first year. And we sort of agreed in the summer, listen, I went there with the challenge of getting back to the championship. And we had just missed out on the playoffs. Personally, I wasn't in any type of form to warrant a championship move. I was, a comfortable League One player at that point in terms of my experience and the way that I was performing. But I had really fallen out of love with football by that stage, because I'd been on quite a lot of loan moves, and finding it challenging some of the personalities that I was dealing with. And in short, the best time I'd had been in that loan spell from QPR to Swindon with Luke, and that's where I was so happy and enjoying my football. And I sat in the summer and I said, this year, if I achieve one thing, it will be to enjoy my football, because I know if I'm in that space, I will play my best football. And that's the best way that I've got of achieving my ambition. So I had no intention, believe it or not. Well, I had no intention of going back to Swindon, because they were in League Two at the time. And to me, that was just, as much as I love the club, incomprehensible, considering I wanted and thought I could be easily a championship player in my mind at the time. But the more I sat with it, Lee Power, the chairman, who I know is sort of divided opinion, but I always had a good relationship with, a really good relationship with, sort of was texting me throughout the summer, sort of, just in case, I know you're not, thinking about it, but we're here. And, every now and again, seeing you haven't signed anywhere, what's happening? And in the end, I sat with my wife and she said, why don't you just go and enjoy your football again? And I said to Lee, Lee, my ambition is to get the club back into League One. I'm coming here because I want to enjoy my football, and I love the club, and that was, the start of something special, because I signed with a week before the season. That famous, I see sometimes it gets on social media, that famous introductory photo of me in a bush, sort of having signed my contract. I'm at the training ground. I don't think the social media person was too happy with the photographer, but I was literally stood outside a bush. And then there was only one low squad number left on the roster, on the squad list, and it was number 3, or it was number 40. And I went with number 3 after, again, consulting my wife, saying, what do you think I should go for? She said, go with the number 3, for a number of these reasons. And then the first game of the season, we played Macclesfield, and I scored a hat-trick.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a question here from Andrew which says, remember the first game of the 2018-19 season versus Macclesfield, that crazy hat-trick. Now, for those who might remember that game, we were trading 2-1 into injury time, were we not? Then you'd got a goal early, earlier on, but then take us through those crazy last few minutes then.
Yeah, it was mental. I hadn't played that well throughout the game, or what I would have expected, and then I managed to sort of nip a back post header, I think, which was uncharacteristic, and we got a penalty, and I sort of stepped up, and I think the keeper got a hand to it, and it just creeped in off the post, and yeah, just obviously bedlam, super happy, didn't expect anything else, and within a few minutes later we got another penalty. And yeah, I was able to step up and put it away. But I think at that moment, I just really sort of trusted the football gods, that this was my home. And the club will always be bigger than a player, but for me, I just felt that was my place to play football. The county ground, was my place, and every time I went with that choice of the heart, I always got rewarded so much more.
Well, it's a very rare thing to score a hat-trick on your debut, of course, a full debut, if I might say. Sammy Parkin did it. I think I'm right in saying Alan Mays did it many years ago. I mean, that is the way to get the fans on your side. I mean, they're kind of on your side already because your loan spells, but on your full debut, that's the way to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it just felt like everything after the few years that I'd had was just coming to an amazing, not even conclusion, beginning really, where I had, for the first time in my footballing career, not worried about where I was at in my career, what level I was playing at, how far away I was from getting back to the Premier League. And I just said, I'm going to enjoy my football. And yeah, to have that debut was pretty special.
So many players say how much they enjoyed their playing days at Swindon. The Wiltshire Purlo left for other reasons, but some thought the grass would be greener elsewhere. How's Hibernian, Harry McCurdy? I think you get the reference there. Daz St George, evening all. Just love the way you played football, brought class and play in midfield on a par with Hoddle. How does that make you feel?
I think that's a stretch. As much as that's very kind, I think that is a stretch.
Purlo and Hoddle. That's pretty good company. What was your favourite goal for Swindon? Let's get that one out of the way then. Which one would that be? Oh, would it be the free kick against Port Vale, perhaps?
I think. Well, there was a few. There was one in my first spell where we played Millwall at home, and I scored a header at the back post in the 96th minute. And I don't score many headers, and just the intensity in that game and the fact that it was a last-minute equaliser was pretty special. And then, yeah, the Port Vale goal was pretty good, from an execution point of view, and to score a free kick was great. But I did really love the MK Dons. There were probably two goals in that game that I look back on and love. The first was a slow roll into the corner, and the second was a Panenka, which was a brilliant feeling for sure. So I'd probably say those two are my favourite.
Well, Jerry has made that very point. Panenka away at MK Dons was class. So there you are. So let's get to did Michael Doughty know there was a spell where there was a 12-goal period where he either scored or set up for us, which is pretty amazing. That's from Mitchell. I'm just going through the statistics. 108 appearances, 23 goals, 22 assists, which is a pretty good strike rate in anyone's number. I mean, the one I always remember, the goal I always remember, if you remember, we'll get onto this season as a whole in a minute, but the last game we played at home was Forest Green, which we lost in that one. But the week before, we played Scunthorpe on a Tuesday night, and you played a delightful little ball through to Owen Doyle, who just slipped it over the keeper. I mean, that ability to see that pass, and I've looked at videos this afternoon, I've watched a lot of them, the ability to be able to see that pass, is that natural? Can that be coached? How does that come about?
I think a bit of both. I think we all, whatever line of work you're in, we're all products of our environment. I don't want to get too sort of philosophical, but we are, like, you sort of learn and pick things up. And there are a lot of coaches that, improved me. But I think sort of technically, I'd always, that was always my strength, was my technique and my, I guess, ability to pass, forward. And yeah, over time, I just, I learned, and one of the managers I had, I can't remember who exactly, but said to me, and it always stayed with me. I think it might have been Richie Wellens, actually. Strengthen your strengths, and a lot of people, make a lot of noise around, improving on your weaknesses, but actually being able to do one thing exceptionally well is quite an important skill set, and that's what I just practice on a lot. In training, every time we do a passing drill, or I'd be focused and really wanting to execute those type of things super well.
We certainly did that. Now, Anthony says, did Michael ever steal Patrick Bamford's tuck money? Now, does this go back to your school days? Obviously, you went to Harrow famously, which and he's also involved in your company, or he's a big supporter of your company, isn't he? So, what's that story?
So Patrick's dad and my dad actually went to nursery school together in Newark. So our families have been connected for a long time. 50 odd years, I believe, maybe even more now. So, they were from pretty rough working class backgrounds, and it's sort of been well documented that, my dad was a successful businessman, and I had the privilege of going to one of the best schools in the country off the back of that. So I get the tuck reference, and a lot of the time, obviously, Patrick and I are sort of positioned as the kind of the posher boys of football. But it's funny to us a little bit because the circumstances in which we grew up were obviously, were pretty nice, but actually the backgrounds in which our parents came from were pretty rough, and my dad was he wasn't shy in reminding us about where he came from and trying to instill some of those values. So Pat's a great friend, and he's a proper footballer.
Question remains: did you steal his tuck money? You didn't answer that.
I've always had one over on him to this day.
Fair enough. This is from Malcolm. Remember being on Carlisle Station with Michael and the General and follow them onto the wrong train, only to find out that I was on the way to Waterloo when I needed to get off at Cheltenham. Fortunately, I was able to change at Preston. Sorry, I interrupted you and Anthony's Mackie D's. By coincidence, we got the General on next week, so it'll be nice to get his reminiscences as well. I mean, you would have shared a lot of train journeys back with the General, I guess, would you, from up north?
Yeah, no, we followed each other around. I played with him at Peterborough, and then obviously at Swindon, and at that level, on his day, one of the the best holding midfielders there is. Send him my regards. I hope he's well.
Yeah, good. Right, let's talk about that season then, which was a magnificent season for all of us who were lucky enough to see it. What are your memories of how it started? It was Scunthorpe away, I think, on the opening day, wasn't it? A 2-0 win up there. And things really went on from there. What was the spirit like before that season kicked off?
I think it was pretty good. We went to Spain, I believe, Portugal on a pre-season trip. And you could tell we had some good players. We sort of signed the lad Jerry Yates, who I think is now at Blackpool and was doing well. We had some good players in the squad, and as a player, I was getting to kind of a more experienced part of my career, sort of 26, 27, and I knew a good squad from a bad squad. You didn't always know how good, but you could tell if you had some good players or not. And I did feel going into that season that we had a strong squad. I felt even more, I guess, strongly that we had a really good manager, and Richie, as he's proving now, is a very, very, very good manager for that level and beyond. So I felt confident. I think the spirit was good. I don't remember it being exceptional, but you never know where you are. I'm a bit skeptical of spirit until you go through a period of results, because you can be the best mates in the world on the surface, and then you really find out who people are and what they're made of when the shit starts to hit the fan. Sorry, for want of a better phrase.
Fair enough.
So it was good.
I suppose the signing of Owen Doyle was a bit of a masterstroke too, wasn't it? I mean, his contribution in terms of goals is extraordinary. Jerry Yates, you mentioned, not only in goals but his work rate, things like that. How were those two to link up with? Because their movement must have been exceptional for you to pop the balls into them. Yeah,
I mean, Jerry, we always felt would go on and play at a much higher level because of his football intelligence. For a very thick player off the pitch, and I love Yatesy, but for a very thick player off the pitch, he was a very, very intelligent player on it in terms of how he used his body, how he, how he sort of played with others, and Owen as well. Is just an exceptional goal scorer. I think he's scored goals at every single club he's been at, and certainly for that level, for League Two, to have those two up front was really, a top end League One, maybe even Championship strike force. And when you've got two, the most important thing in football for all the other stuff is putting the ball in the net. And when you have two people who have that ability to do so, but also can play a way which fits the team and works well, then we had an unfair advantage in many respects.
When did you kind of feel something might happen then? We mentioned the Exeter game. I know one of your favourite moments, having looked through videos this afternoon, is that magnificent game away at Plymouth. Somebody who lives near Exeter, it was a wonderful moment for me, I have to tell you. But, that day, I know you came on as a sub, but you contributed greatly to the move which led to the winning goal. And how special was that moment in that season, would you say?
Yeah, it was really special. I remember thinking, each time we went through a test like that, Plymouth, massive club at League Two status, full house at I think it was the opening of their new stand as well that day. And it just felt, the games that we were ticking off weren't insignificant games. They were against our rivals, and we were winning. And it felt like there was an inevitability to that season. That being said, I was in a foul mood that day because obviously I'd been dropped, and I had a great run up to Christmas, and Richie dropped me for the game, and I was pretty fuming, and I didn't really find my best consistent form until January of that year.
But that moment when Doyle knocks that one in the corner, it was a beautiful little back heel into the siding and the netting, and the place goes bonkers, doesn't it? I mean, as footballers, that's the sort of atmosphere you want to play in, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the away fans are always sort of special at any club, but particularly at Swindon, that year we had some really great away days, and I think that moment I remember jumping into the crowd and everyone going mental, and you just get this sort of that's what you play for. That's why you play is to have those moments in front of people, to make your day and their day, and it's just pure elation.
Well, you certainly made my day, I can tell you that now. Let's have a look. Anthony says, Michael, you've mentioned your wife several times. How much of an influence has she been on your career? And he says, used to talk to Michael's mum and wife, then girlfriend, in the Arkles during games and joke with them when he missed an easy chance. Surely you never missed easy chances, did you? So how much, your family, I know your dad was a great influence on you, wasn't he? And you had a great relationship with him. So I'm guessing that family is a big thing for you.
Yeah, of course. I think when you have a family, and I'm now a dad, you realise that a life shared and a life sort of in service of others is a much more fulfilling one. Sometimes just waking up every day as a young footballer who just has to go and to training and play PlayStation and stuff. That just never really excited me that much. So having a family and working towards something of purpose and meaning is very important. And I've been very lucky that I was thinking about this the other day because I'm turning 30. I was thinking, how lucky I am and have been to have just been born. And what I mean by that is like it's just the ovarian lottery of being born into a family, and I've been very lucky to have been born into two pretty wicked parents and the life that I've had so far. So yeah, it's a massive part of who I am, and I think I'm sort of grateful every day for it, really.
You mentioned how you were playing your best form after Christmas. That must have been equally frustrating. Well, I mean, let's put it in perspective. Of course, the pandemic came along, and I'm not sort of diminishing it in any way. But for a footballer, you're coming to what should be the climax of a fantastic season, and that is suddenly taken away. Can you remember how you felt at that time? You played Forest Green on the final Saturday, lost 2-0, ironically went second, having been top for ages and ages. How did that feel when that came along?
It was odd. I think we were in a state of paralysis, like many. It was sort of this. I remember the first 2 weeks of this news and feeling like incredibly, like we were in wartime in many respects. That's what I have no idea what wartime feels like, but having watched a few sort of historical movies and read a bit, it felt, there was this sort of kind of very intense sort of energy around, and you didn't want to sort of, you didn't know what the rules were, you didn't know what life looked like, and for us that was mainly the focus. It was just trying to make sense of what was going on, and all of these sort of Downing Street updates, and gripped by the television, and then as that started to unfold and lockdown became more normalized and there was a little bit more information about what was going on, I started to think about football again and was hopeful. And I think the hope was the hardest thing, because nobody knew what was going on. So I don't hold it against anyone, but we were constantly, okay, next week we'll make a decision and the Football League will look at it and review it in a month. And we were training as if we had still a season to play for. And we were hopeful to play because we were the best team in the league, and we all wanted to finish what we started. So the longer it went on, the worse it was for me, versus the sort of the initial phase of, I wouldn't call it excitement because that sounds like I'm sort of trivializing it, but there was this sort of, alertness that you were feeling, which kind of felt quite new and foreign.
Yeah, none of us have experienced anything like it, and hopefully we never will again, I think it's fair to say. But you'd mentioned the excitement of the Exeter game, which in all my years, I've been watching the town since '68, and I've very rarely have I experienced an atmosphere like that day, because Doyle was back, Yates was back. I remember Anthony Grant conducting the crowd when the Ginger Pele song was being sung. It was such a day, wasn't it?
Yeah, actually, I totally forgot about the sort of saga with Jerry and Owen and the Bradford situation, and the fact that game took place after it. Yeah, so for me, that was so special, that game in particular, because the emotion of having our two arguably best players playing for us again, and just to see like Swindon as a team at the top of the league, Swindon as a club, I guess, and a fan base, the potential of, and I sort of spoke about it earlier, the reason I came back was to try and get the club promoted, and I be part of kind of compound success, because you saw like the Bournemouths of this world go from League Two, League One into the Premier League, and that was for me like real validation of what I had come, the project, and it felt this was a proper football club. This was a proper football club, and one of my best memories that day.
Another great away performance, of course, was at Crawley. You remember that? It was a filthy day, wasn't it? It was rain. And it was a magnificent game of football, and one of the best away performances I can ever remember Swindon play. I mean, how did it feel to play in that? Because it was total football, if I remember rightly.
Yeah, I mean, after that game, that's when I felt most confident that we were going to comfortably get promoted, because we played with such control. We had a goalkeeper, Tom Bender, who was just super good, really, as like for want of a less obvious adjective. He was just a really good goalkeeper, and our back four, the three of us in midfield, just had this rhythm that we were playing with. And then, as we mentioned a lot, the sort of the strength of our front line, and we just battered them.
Yeah, Now, obviously, the decision is taken that the season's going to come to an end. And Swindon have bizarrely given the title PPG, points per game. I was in my garden with mowing the lawn when I heard about it. Where were you when you heard about that?
I think I was on my balcony. So I don't have a lawn in London. I've got a little balcony, and that's where, I ended up stinking a few too many beers. And I think on that PPG day, we were all sort of anticipating the news. I think it was not a foregone conclusion, but there was a strong chance it would happen. So I think we were all sort of on FaceTime with each other, talking, and it was one of those hot, I think, spring sort of summer afternoons. And I ended up, I think, having about 10 beers on my balcony and celebrating this points per game season. I was determined, for me personally anyway, to not see it as not a promotion, because I just felt like I had so much conviction that as a team we were by far and away the best team, and the season's finished sort of Feb March time. So for me, it just felt like validation of the work that we had done, and subsequently polished off a few beers to celebrate.
And you had a Zoom meeting, didn't you? A big Zoom PBG party. I see that listed as one of your 3 best moments. Tell us about that, because that's another strange, weird experience, but it sounds enjoyable.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, it's never like the real thing, but I think a lot of us experienced that lockdown kind of, I guess, etiquette, where you sat on Zoom and you're sort of on mute and then not on mute. And for us, it was just a complete free for all. Everyone sort of reminiscing, checking in. We hadn't seen each other for a few months, I think, by that stage. And it was just our chance to really try and mark the moment and celebrate with each other. And I think obviously the lockdown was incredibly challenging, but it also helped you prioritize and I have gratitude for the things that were sort of taken away or that you had missed. And I think at that moment we all sort of just were delighted.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there was that bizarre presentation where you all had to socially distance at the Carriage Ground. Did you not go to that, or did you go to that? What happened?
I went to that, and it was probably one of the top 3 worst experiences of my football career. Just to socially distance when you're receiving a championship-winning medal, and not celebrate was almost cruel. But I think we managed. I think there was a relaxation of the rules. I feel like at some point in that time there was sort of this in and out sort of situation happening, and you could, by that stage, I think you could convene outside in pubs and restaurants. I might shot myself in the foot, but I believe that was the case anyway. But I remember basically around that time being able to go for a few beers with everyone and celebrate in some way, shape or form.
Lots of comments coming. Crawley, unbelievable goals scored that day with Doughty and Granty bossing it in the middle. Evening all, great to see Michael on here. Thank you so much for your service to Swindon. I so remember that crazy hat-trick as if it was yesterday. Do you still look for Swindon's results? Well, clearly you do, because obviously you knew it was a great result on Saturday.
Yeah, well, occasionally I'll even tune in for a game if I can on the laptop. I sort of, on the Sky Sports Football app, I sort of check all the results in the afternoon and then wait for around 6 o'clock when the video comes through. But I've still got a few mates who play for the team. We don't speak that much, but Ben Gladwin I was at QPR with for a while, and he's, I think, captaining the side now, so really sort of rooting for him. Johnny Williams I sort of was playing at Wales with for when I was sort of much younger, and I think sort of Frenchie's still there, Matthew Baudry, and there are some players there from my time. So yeah, absolutely. I know this is not from a playing perspective, but I do believe that my journey with Swindon is not over just yet. There's going to be a much longer history.
Interesting. because somebody sent in a question about whether you might invest in Swindon Town in the future.
It's my dream. Like, it's unlikely. Is in short, but I do want to get back into football at some stage of my life. Once I've sort of scratched, I guess, this significant itch that I have to build this company that I'm working on. But I do believe that with my background as a player and also now with my background in business, like, there is a ton of value for me to bring at some part of that sort of situation. And I don't know whether that's in an ownership capacity or in a sort of an executive capacity. But yeah, for me, I say this totally openly. I grew up a Forest fan and had a shotgun wedding, but I term myself a Swindon fan now. You know, that's the team that I follow and look out for and just feel totally connected to.
So you're not ruling out, you're not ruling it in, possible.
Who knows?
Investment in Swindon.
Who knows? Like, honestly, like, it's that these footballing decisions or football ownership cannot be. It's not a logical decision, and I mean that, respectfully. It's not. These are, terribly capital intensive businesses that require a ton of emotional energy. And right now, I'm trying to build Hilo into, a really exciting business for the planet and for athletes around the world. But I do believe there is a unwritten part of the chapter with football with me that I can take my history as a player, obviously my family's history as owners, and now my sort of hands-on experience in operating a company and come back and do something. I don't know in what capacity that looks like, but Swindon would have to be top of the list for me if that was the case because of my affection for the place.
Well, I'm sure Johnny from the Swindon Advertiser, who might be listening to this, will be writing it down as we speak as a possible headline. Right. Can Michael nail the rumour that he left Swindon because he fell out with Lee Power, when in fact it was to develop your trainer business and spend important time with your new daughter? Now, you'll be aware, got promotion, played a couple of games the following season, and then you've got a contract, but then there was this decision that you would finish with football. You'll be aware there were so many rumours as to why that happened. If you want to give us the full story, did you fall out with Lee Power? How would it all work? Just tell us what happened.
Not at all. I mean, as I said earlier on the call, Lee, I know he's had his criticism, but for me was a brilliant owner to work under. And I had some tough owners throughout my career. No, he was brilliant. I think so. There's two things here. One is why I did it, and the second is how it was communicated and handled. So I'll deal with the latter versus the former, just to begin with. And the reason I didn't mention anything or tried to be as nondescript as possible was, A, it was a private decision, and I didn't want to feel like I was having to explain myself when the circumstances were quite personal to me. The second thing is I had battled for my career for a long time around, because of my background, how people viewed and perceived me, and I didn't want it to become like, some sort of narrative that like I couldn't be bothered anymore, or posh footballer quits, type mentality, because anyone who came across me in my career knew that was not who I was. And the third thing, which was the main reason, was like the team were about to start a season, and I knew that as much as this would have been a headline for a few days, the most important thing was that the team could ultimately just replace me in some way, shape or form, and the club would carry on. And I'd seen football news a lot in my career at that point, and 3-4 days of newsworthiness, and then it sort of dies very quickly. So for me, it was, it was my choice in short. The reason it was nothing to do with Lee. It was nothing to do with anything other than I had played for 10 years professionally up to that point. I had just come off the back of my most enjoyable season from a footballing perspective, where I'd arguably played the best football and consistent football of my entire career, and certainly had the most fun doing it. We had gone into a pandemic. I had experienced being a normal human being, although in a pandemic, 6 months. I've never had the opportunity to do as a footballer previously. And what I mean by being normal is waking up, being with my family, going to a desk and doing a job, because at that point, we weren't really playing football. So throughout the days, we had to keep up with our fitness. But, I was filling my days by working on high-low and keeping myself stimulated like everyone else to try and not go crazy. Off the back of that, I started to realize that actually there is a life away from football, and it does afford you time to be with the family. It does afford you time to work on things that you're passionate about. And when we came back to the season with a decimated team and no fans, and that was a really important factor in my decision, is we were going to a season where it was confirmed we'd be behind closed doors until at least January. And with me and this company and this idea of driving impact and making a difference in society away from football, that was growing and growing. It just felt like the right time to leave. Like, I never wanted football to retire me. I never wanted to be like, and I know I was young, but I never wanted to be in a position where I hadn't found a new contract and I was sort of like scrambling around and I had no purpose and I had no direction. And it just felt like this time, these moving parts were all coming together. And it was a decision that I took with a heavy heart because I love the club, but I also felt very uncomfortable that I was the club's highest earner at that point, and had a long-term contract. And when I sat with myself, was I fully 100% committed at that point after going into a pandemic season? And I wasn't. And it's not fair of me to sit there and take a salary from a club that was going through a difficult COVID situation if I wasn't 100% committed. And those are my reasons. And some people might understand that and some people might not, but I haven't really looked back, if I'm honest.
Because there are all sorts of rumours about mental health and all that. What rumours are. They start and then they go, it's like Topsy, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. It wasn't a mental health issue then, is what you're saying. Is that right?
No, not at all. I mean, I think mental health is obviously importantly so being talked about a lot, but I think everyone has mental health issues, on a relatively frequent basis in terms of dealing with the stresses of life. But I was not in a space at all that was challenging from that perspective. I was thinking about my family in the future, and also and it might not make sense to people, but I felt the burden of the club with me, in the sense that I only I operated at Swindon in a very heartfelt way, and that paid me back so many times. And I've spoken about it already in this interview. It's like I always did my best at Swindon when I was like playing from the heart, which sounds a bit soppy, but it's where it showed me the most success. And the moment I felt a reverence for that, and I felt such a respect for that, and the moment I felt like I wasn't as committed, I felt like it was so wrong of me to be sat there taking up, space on the squad when I didn't feel that. And my mental health was completely fine. But that for me was a big driver, was to kind of do right by the club.
Well, that's a clear, open and honest answer. So I hope people understand exactly what you've been saying. And when you said you talk about playing from the heart and all that kind of stuff, you're talking to an old hippie here. When you get into emotions, I'm with you. Are you all right with that? Mike says, the best footballer I've ever seen at creating space for others by intelligent off-the-ball runs. I don't know how it's possible to even think how to do it. And Carrot56 says, could he be called a town legend in the unfortunately short time with us? Absolutely yes. Pure class. You see, this is the sort of thing that people say about you, and I hope you take that away with you from tonight, because you are very well respected, and many people would love to see you back in a pair of boots. I'm guess from a that ain't going to happen, or is it going to happen at any level? Are you thinking of playing again at any level?
I think it'd be very tough. I think I played in the Swindon Legends game, and although I am very fit, at the moment, weirdly, from a running perspective, it took me about 8 days to recover after that game. And, I think for me, what I wouldn't want to do, which I feel, because I have thought about it, I won't lie, I've thought every now and again, you know what, I could still do it. But the feeling that I have, and again, it does sound a bit hippie-ish, but the feeling that I have and the memories I have are so special to me that if I went back, out of this sort of small voice in my head that thought I could still, make, and I'm not the same, which it is a very high probability, in fact, an enormous probability that is the case. And that is then my memory of the second, kind of comeback and physically not being the same. I just kind of want to stay in this space where, I just love Swindon. Hopefully they love me. And as I said, who knows what the future holds.
Always welcome back, Doubt. Such a fantastic person. Continue good luck and best wishes to you and your family for the future. You're always welcome back at the county ground. You know that whenever you want to come back. Your company then, we'll finish on this because it's very important. I mean, as I said to you before, the environment is really hitting the headlines at the moment. COP27, Conference of Partners or Congress of Partners is happening in Egypt. The Prime Minister decided not to go. I know that Greta Thunberg's not going as well. It's interesting. The counter argument is lots of world leaders flying on airplanes to Egypt, kind of to an environmental conference. Always seems a bit odd. But anyway, Hilo Athletics. Tell us a little bit about that, because 60% bio. Go on. You tell us about it. It's a very green company, isn't it?
Yeah. So for me, I think outside of just my love of football, the one thing that I have sort of reflected on recently is the privilege that I had of being outside every day. And when you do a normal job, you realize actually being outside every day and playing sport is a special privilege, I guess. And nature has been the single thread in my life in terms of happiness. Every moment that I've felt incredible happiness has been in nature, really. So I think that's first thing. Second thing is, as a professional footballer, you associate with brand in a very strong way, and as fans, as athletes, we all associate with sports brands. It's particularly important in that world, because what you wear on your chest is a representation of you and your values. Are you Nike? Are you Adidas? Are you Messi? Are you Ronaldo? And these stories that become associated with sports brands. And when I realized that was my platform and that was the way that I was expressing myself as a sports person, I became troubled by the messages that I was inadvertently also subscribing to from an environmental point of view, because those businesses, whilst they're doing some good work and stuff, aren't built with kind of sustainability and those ethics at their core. So for me, I just wanted to create a really cool sports brand that spoke to me as somebody who loves, the marketing stories of sport, who loves the I guess the feeling that anything can be achieved, but that doesn't want to compromise my values around the environment and my values around nature. And at Hilo, we are trying to make products. You alluded to one of our running shoes, other sporting apparel, other sporting goods. We're trying to make it with the environment in mind and not with the environment as an afterthought. And the only thing I'll say on it, to bring it back to football somewhat, is that throughout my career, year on year, I saw climate change impacting sport and the football industry more and more. And I think as fans, you guys have probably seen that. It's like, there's always that period of time during this football calendar where you're not sure if the games are going to stay on because flooding, crazy weather patterns, storm, whatever it is coming through. And I don't remember that when I started playing as much as I do now. There was a time in that championship winning season where we didn't have a training ground. Like we could not, we were driving around to various training facilities trying to find a place to train as a professional team at the top of the league. And for me, that just like this narrative within climate change, that it's something that is 50 years away, is like a very damaging narrative. It's happening now. It's impacting sport. The Premier League in August was playing in 35, 36 degrees temperatures. And anybody who watched those games could see that the product were near the standard that it normally is. And we have to start bringing these conversations to the, sorry, I don't want to sort of be too intense, but in my opinion, we have to start bringing these conversations to the forefront of sport, to maintain sporting integrity, to maintain the privilege that it is to be outside, and to maintain the opportunity of future sporting generations to still play. So long speech over, but for me, obviously, I'm very passionate about using my platform as a former professional footballer to start to kind of bring these things to the front of sporting agenda, really.
Well, I think you're doing it very successfully because your company's doing all right, I think it's fair to say. Daz says, Michael, a true gent and Swindon Town legend, thank you for your appearance tonight. Wishing you and your family all the very success for the future. Hopefully see you back at the county ground one day. Marcus says, what a guy. Always welcome back at the county ground, legend. Pete B says, very much a Swindon legend. Another one here, great role model of a footballer and person, great explanation to be all in or all out is a great attitude in football and in your business and any role in life. One of my favourite players to watch in town or at town and listen to. Hope you combine football and business well for us in the future. Always welcome back. Clem doing a good job with it right now. Thank you. So I think there's a lot of love out there. So A, if you want to come back, play the odd game. B, if you want to come back and help Clem with the ownership, you're welcome.
In some capacity, Vic, at some point, the paths will cross. Sure.
That would be magnificent. Michael, thank you so much for your time tonight. It's been a great pleasure. And, you're sort of this footballer that's a little unique, if you don't mind me saying that.
No, that's fine. I'm embracing that.
all the better for it. So thank you very much indeed for your time.
No, thank you. I just appreciate all the memories that the club have given me, and obviously all of the fans during my time and afterwards. I still get like such lovely messages, and it really is special. And I just feel very lucky that I had the opportunity to play for a team like that with a group of people and fans that supported it. So my big hope now is that this year is the year that we get back up, and then off the back of that, it's sort of a couple of years of mediocrity and mid-table in League One. I'd love that. Just keep. We all would.
But actually, do you get that feeling? I mean, I don't know. That win on Saturday, Chris was there as well. It was the same sort of feeling to me as your championship season. Do you get that kind of feeling again?
Well, I look at the team, and you got to look at some of the spine, and you think, okay, there's a pretty decent spine. The boy that they signed from, I think it's Plymouth, Jeffcott, is it?
Jeffcott, yeah.
Yeah, knows where the net is. You need these. You need those. That you need the makeup of a team to build success, and then they have got continuity with the new manager or the previous assistant manager, and there's a way of playing and an identity there, which is important. So I my only question mark, and it's not to put pressure, is January. If the team's doing well, that's a good opportunity to sort of reinforce the squad and make sure that there's enough players, because it's with a young team. My only experience has shown me that as the season goes on, you don't have necessarily the experience to get it over the line, and that's one thing that I saw with the Swindon team. Is we had some very experienced, Anthony Grant, you mentioned, Doyle, Matthew Borgery, Luke McCormick, these players in the squad that had been there and achieved that stuff and were very sort of calming factors.
Caddis, of course, as well.
Yeah, Cads as well, exactly. So I do think if there's a real opportunity come January, then it is a time to sort of bring in a few more troops.
Well, there you go, Chris.
Yeah.
What a tremendous gentleman. That's all I can say.
Yeah, the comments coming through, Michael, are amazing. So what I will do is I will cut and paste them into a document and send you them, because I think you ought to actually see how people actually relate to you and everything. And the explanation of your leaving, spot on. It's fair play to you. That's all I can say. So.
Right, well, run like the world depends on it. That's my.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Don't go away, Michael, a moment. You just stay there a minute. So, well, thank you very much, everybody, for watching. We will be back next week, as we said. We'll be back with Anthony Grant. Just a quick one. The following week, which is a Monday night panel, we're actually doing something a bit different. We're going live to a venue. We're going to Marlborough Town Football Club. And so we're going to have a bit of a social, bring the Monday night panel from there, and also sort of just have a bit of a social afterwards. So if anybody's in the Marlborough, anywhere around that Hungerford, anywhere around that area, Devizes, Pewsey, please come along. Get there about 6:30 on the Monday the 14th, and you will be part of our first ever Monday night panel on the road. So yes. So okay, brilliant. Thanks so much, everybody. So we will see you next week. Thank you, Michael, and we will be off. Thank you.